Okay.
Did you?
Okay, I think we're live. Hello, welcome to today's AMA. Looks like folks are streaming in, which is great. My name is Leah, and I'm joined here by Mikki. We are from VegFund, and we are looking forward to sharing a little bit about VegFund, a little bit about some things that have changed slightly that we want to introduce, and then answer your questions. That's really what this is for. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen and go into just a couple of slides. So welcome to our live social. My name is Leah Gage. I am the program manager at VegFund. I have been with VegFund for about almost 5 years now. It'll be 5 years in April. And I work on grant review, managing relationships with grantees, and working to manage all of our other programs that we have to reach grantees.
And I'm Mikki. I'm the program officer. I've been at VegFund for almost 4 years. And I also work on grant review for the community events program specifically. I also do data reporting, and also I'm involved with some of the different databases that we use internally.
And we want to know who you are as well. So please drop your comments and let us know who you are, where you're from. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and Mikki is in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And we serve grantees all over the world. So we would love to see where you're from. We're able to see all your comments from Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. So please share with us. So real quick, in case you're new to VegFund, I want to give just a quick overview of who we are and what we do. Many of you probably know VegFund. The primary thing that we do is we make grants to activists. And we do that through 3 different grant programs. Our community events program, which Mikki mentioned, that's kind of our flagship program. And that really focuses on grassroots outreach, food samplings, offering vegan food samples in a public setting, screening vegan films and documentaries, doing paid per view and video outreach, and also hosting veg fests and fairs and other kinds of events that are educational and that are really aimed at reaching the non-vegan public. We also fund several online campaigns, which tend to be either mentored campaigns and challenges, vegan challenges like Veganuary, for example. We fund lots of different online activism as well. And then special projects is, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's kind of our catch-all program for long-term projects, things that are not quite events, not quite, grassroots outreach, a little more long-term, maybe a little bit more involved, or institutional outreach, things like that. But in addition to making grants, we also have a lot of resources and information available for grantees. We definitely encourage you to check out our website, which is vegfund.org. And we have a blog that we update regularly. We just published 2 really great blogs on evaluation. Evaluation is a piece that grantees find really difficult, but it's also really important. So how do you know that the work that you're doing is effective? And so we have 2 blogs that we just published on that can really give you some ideas for how to evaluate your work, how to start from a perspective of, a volunteer activist who's doing this work on the weekend. There are lots of ways to evaluate your work that aren't super in-depth, but that can give you a good sense of how you are doing and the impact you're making. Plus plenty of other blogs. So we hope you'll check that out. And then we have a resources library that has just tons and tons of information. This can give you ideas for how to start your activism, how to amp up your activism, teach you about other aspects of vegan outreach. All of our webinars live in that area. So our resources page is great. And then we also publish several activist stories, which are kind of like case studies of our grantees. And those will give you an idea of the types of projects that we fund and successful versions of that kind of outreach. So during today's live social, feel free to ask questions. You can comment, and we will be viewing those live, and we'll be able to answer your questions. You can like and share this presentation. If you're viewing it on a social network platform, you can share this presentation. It is being recorded, and so it will live on our website eventually. If you want to share it, we ask that you use VegFund Learn as a hashtag, and you can tag us on any platform. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We are at VegFund. After the live social, we really, really hope, speaking of evaluation, that you will evaluate us. We have a Typeform survey here, vegfund.typeform.com/December 2022 AMA. We will share that in the comments after the presentation, but we hope that you'll just go to that page right now. So it'll live in your browser, and as soon as you're done with this presentation, you can answer just a few questions. It doesn't take more than 2 minutes, and it gives us a lot of really good information. So before we jump in, let's look. It looks like we have folks from South Africa, Tampa, Florida, Washington, D.C. Hey, Max, Voters for Animals, awesome group. Veg, Michigan, Corning, New York, Mexico, Washington. Really awesome to see so many people from so many places. Cairo, Egypt, Kissimmee, Florida. Really cool. Thank you all so much for being here today. This is, one of the opportunities that we have to, we can't see you as obviously, but it's a great way for us to connect with grantees and applicants and activists. So this is really fun for Mikki and I to do. We see Romania, Denmark, really, really cool. So one of the reasons we wanted to have today's AMA is to present a couple of changes that we've made. So I'm going to turn it over to Mikki. We've added some questions to our applicant profile and our applications that we want to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. So we have added several questions, as Leah said, to both our applicant profile and all of our applications. So that includes the community events application, the special projects application, and the online campaigns application. So if you're not familiar with how our grant system works, when you first create a profile, first create an account, the first thing you have to do is log in and create an applicant profile for yourself. So this is where we gather some basic information about you, the grantee. So the questions that we've added are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've asked things like, what's your age? What's your gender identity? Your race, ethnicity? What's your primary motivation for activism? And a little bit of your history. So the point of adding these questions is to evaluate who is our grantee base? Where is our money getting distributed to? And is it looking like it's a fair spread? And then in the applications, we've added the same questions. So once your applicant profile is completed, then you get the opportunity to create applications and apply for funding from us. And that's where the questions relate to the target audience of your event. So let's say you're hosting a food sampling, and that would be a community events application. We're going to ask you the same details, but for your target audience. So who's your target age group, your target race, ethnicity, the target gender identity. And again, that's so that we can see where our funds are going to and who we're reaching through our activist pool. So we want to see exactly what target audiences are being targeted, and then also who is doing that. So the relationship between the grantee and the audiences. And for each of these questions, there's always an option to not answer it. None of them, they're all required, but there is an option in each of them where you can say, I prefer to not answer this question. So if you choose to not disclose your race, ethnicity, or your gender identity, or your age, that's okay. The more information that we have, the better, and we do appreciate it. But also, if you're uncomfortable doing that, that's always okay. You can opt out of it.
Yeah, and these questions are, or the responses are totally confidential. As Mikki said, this is really information for us internally. It helps us understand who we're reaching and whether we need to do more work to reach a broader audience, to be more equitable and inclusive in our outreach, and just have that information so that we know where to start from. So the other thing I want to talk about is our special projects guidelines. I talked about special projects briefly. And so on our website, vegfund.org, you can find just at the top, we have grants, and then you can click on special projects to see a lot of this information. It will all be on our website, but we've identified several priorities for next year. And I think this is helpful for folks as they're applying for grants to see what our priorities are. This doesn't mean that this is the only thing we're going to be funding. But if you have projects that kind of fit into these categories, or if you have a couple different projects and you're not sure which one to apply for, this will give you a good sense of what we're hoping to fund next year. So one of the big things that we're seeing is plant-based nutrition education for medical and health professionals, as well as medical students. We have seen such an uptick in this kind of work, and we're really seeing a lot of effective work being done. We know that physicians and medical professionals reach thousands of patients and clients through their work in their careers. And we know that the work that can be done to reach those professionals can really, spread the web of vegan outreach. We also know that a lot of medical students don't learn anything about nutrition in their work. And so we're seeing a lot of activists and groups trying to change that. And so if that's a kind of project that you're working on, or if you know of ways to engage more with medical students or medical professionals, we really want to fund those sorts of projects. As well, we want to fund projects that reach institutional settings. We know that we can really scale our outreach if we can reach an institutional setting, particularly in like a cafeteria setting. So we've seen some great success reaching schools, K through 12 schools, universities, and colleges, trying to replace animal products with plant-based and plant-forward products. And so if you are able to work on those sorts of projects, or if you know of projects like that, that's another area that we're really prioritizing in 2023. And we also talk about some of those projects on our website if you want to look into more of what that is. We love vegan challenges and mentored campaigns. We think these are really effective ways to reach folks, whether they're online or in person, more involved. Especially if there's some kind of pre and post survey that's included, so that we can understand where are the folks who are participating when they begin this challenge, and then where are they after? How have they changed? What information have they learned? And will they be taking any steps to adopt more vegan practices after going through a challenge? Outreach in institutional settings. So not just cafeteria reach, but if you wanted to do, say, a challenge in your workplace, or in a setting where you have like a target audience. Another great one is faith-based settings. There's already a target audience built in when you're reaching your church or your congregation. And we love to see those sorts of projects as well. And then finally, humane education is something that we love to see, especially when those projects have a created curriculum already. So we know that lots of folks want to create new curricula, and that's great, but there's so much great curriculum out there. And if you already have curriculum that's built, and you also have, this is really key, an educational audience that's already built in, maybe you have a relationship with schools or another educational setting, then we can really see great success with humane education programs. So these are some of our priorities for next year. And if you have questions about those, we can talk about that today. I definitely encourage you to look at our website to learn a little bit more about what our priorities are and what we also won't really be funding. We've really outlined that for next year, what we're not able to fund. And so I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that if you're a new applicant and you've never applied for a grant from VegFund before, to just get a sense, because the worst thing is to spend so much time on an application and then get denied because it's something that we wouldn't have funded. We really try to fund every project that comes through, but we can't. And that's just a reality of our own funding. It's a reality of grant making right now. There's so much demand for funds, which is a fantastic problem to have, but it means that unfortunately we can't fund every project. And so we need to just prioritize some certain things that we think are really effective and that will really reach an audience. So that's just a little brief intro to VegFund and some of the changes that we're making for next year. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can just see us and we can answer some of your questions. And it looks like we've already got lots of questions.
Yeah, Leah, so there's a special projects related question for you that I'll put up. Kay asks, is it too late to do a challenge in January?
Great question, Kay. So yes, I think probably it's too late to apply for a challenge for January. I will say there are a lot of challenges that take place in January. And so if you're looking to host a challenge and you want to try it for a different month, that might be more effective because Veganuary is a fantastic program and we love it. And it's become really ubiquitous. And so maybe you would have some luck trying a challenge in a different month. But because the next deadline for special projects is in January, we won't be able to review those projects until after January. Right now, we're almost done reviewing the projects that were submitted for October. And that's where we would want to see projects that are geared toward January. So unfortunately, it is too late to do a challenge in January. It's not too late to do a challenge, of course. It's just too late to apply for a grant from VegFund to do a challenge.
Thanks, Leah.
Yes, thank you.
So Max asks, I'm interested in partnering with DC Outdoor Film Series to show films that intervene with speciesism. How difficult is it to get the rights to show films not on VegFund's suggestion list? A couple of ideas I'm thinking of are Babe and My Octopus Teacher. Is it difficult to get the rights to those, and is it better to stick to the VegFund list? So the VegFund recommended films list, those are just films that we have funded screenings for frequently. We have found that our activists like them, they're popular. But you're certainly not limited to just films on that list. As long as there's a vegan or plant-based message, it's okay to film that movie, to screen that film. And VegFund itself is not involved in the process of getting the rights to screen a film. So that would be something that you would do, whether it's a film from our recommended list or not. That's something that you as the activist would do. And then after your screening, then we would reimburse. If we approved a grant for you ahead of time, then we would reimburse for the screening license. So my understanding of how that process works is there's usually a website or some contact information where you can reach out to the filmmakers, and there's a process for requesting the screening rights, and then they'll send you, whether it's a digital version of the film or an actual DVD, they will send it to you, and then you're able to host your screening. That seems fairly standard from what I've seen. But either way, VegFund wouldn't really be involved with that process.
Yeah, and I see that, Max, you're asking about Babe and My Octopus Teacher. My guess is that Babe would be a lot more difficult since that's like a feature film that was put out a while ago, but I don't know. My Octopus Teacher, I know that was put out through Netflix, and I'm pretty sure that Netflix has an educational component where they may offer licenses to screen films that they deem as like educational, which I think My Octopus Teacher being a documentary, it might fit into that. So if you want to take a look at Netflix and see if they have some information about that, I would definitely encourage you to. I know that we haven't had activists screen those two films in particular. But as Mikki said, going to the films websites in particular, and maybe the companies that put out those films, that will give you a sense of what it takes to get the screening licenses for those films. But we know that the screening licenses are much easier to get for those that are on our website already. We have experience with those. Let's see. It looks like I see a question here. will you be funding libraries? My mother works at a college, and what do you need from me to get in there? So if this is about funding specific resources for libraries, that's we might consider funding that. It would really depend, and in particular depend on the information you could receive about how those resources would be distributed. So buying resources for a library is great, but making sure that those resources are actually seen by students and maybe part of a curriculum or part of a syllabus would be really key, a key piece of the application process for us to know whether we could fund that. So really, if your mother works at a college, that's great. It would really depend on the kind of work that she does. If she's faculty, or if you're able to reach faculty, or try to do some kind of outreach at a college, it wouldn't necessarily need to be through the institution. I mean, some great outreach that we see happens on campus all the time, whether it's offering food samples or just having an educational booth that's either on just on campus or as part of an outreach event that the campus is holding. So I would encourage you to kind of think about how you wanted to do that outreach at the college where your mother works. And there's also lots of activist stories on our website that talk about different kinds of campus-based outreach that are really great. Let's see. Mary Ellen's question here, I'm going to highlight. So am I understanding that you are not favoring these next year educational classes in the community, but not with medical professionals or institutions? I wouldn't say that, no. I'm saying that we are prioritizing those sorts of outreach, but we are always promoting animal rights focused outreach, climate focused outreach, vegan nutrition. It doesn't necessarily have to be with medical professionals and institutions. More so, we're putting that out there on our website so that folks know that that's something that we're really interested in funding, but we're always funding other projects. And at least half of our activists are really focused on animal rights work. And that's always something that we are promoting and funding. So it wouldn't need to be specifically focused on medical professionals.
And I think it's important to note with that as well, the policies that Leah referenced earlier were for special projects specifically. Mm-hmm. So Mary Ellen, I recognize your name as a Food for Life instructor. That would actually be through the community events application. And so in community events, that's also where we tend to see a lot of these events where they're conferences, but also, like Leah said earlier, tabling, having a booth at at a Veg Fest or at another event, doing vegan nutrition series to the community. Mm-hmm. We're still funding those.
Definitely. Thanks, Mikki. Mm-hmm. Okay, Lars asks, outreach and education in institutional settings. Can you give an example? Is this a funding for going out and giving lectures and speeches at schools? Yes, it definitely could be. So if the project is giving lectures at a school or in an institution, we would consider funding that, provided that the person applying has some kind of track record for which they can give such a lecture. So if you want to give a lecture about vegan nutrition, then we want to see that you have some experience and expertise in vegan nutrition, or at least in nutrition in general. If it's focused on animal rights, then maybe you have some experience working in animal rights or something like that. But I think I mentioned, doing a vegan challenge in a workplace. We recently had a really cool application or grant project that we funded, funding a vegan challenge through the Pittsburgh city government. That was really cool. And city government employees got to take part. And that was, that's a great example of outreach in an institutional setting. So really the idea being reaching an institution. I also mentioned faith-based institutions. So if you're part of a church community or a religious community, that's another institutional setting where there's a built-in audience. There's a built-in community that's already gathering that is looking to learn things from one another, ideally, and that could be a perfect setting to introduce some vegan outreach.
All right. Jorge asks, our group and collaborators work on 4 of these: education for health professionals, institutional outreach and education such as schools, as well as events and programs relating food and agriculture and its impacts on climate change and the environment. Should we separate our projects into different applications or make one big application for a joint project? Question number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we create our own material, given that we have found limited quality material in Spanish. Do you have any, it's getting cut off, but sources or freely available?
I know. Let's see where it goes. Sorry, Jorge, your question is getting cut off for us, but I think we know where you're going. Do you have any sources freely available, especially in Spanish? Hopefully. So let's answer the first question. Unfortunately, I can't give you an answer. It really depends. If your projects fit together as one large project, then sure, you could submit one application. If you're asking for general operating funds for an organization that covers all these areas, we do provide general operating grants, but we only provide them once for an organization. So you would really need to kind of figure out what that would be. But really, we want to fund program-related costs. So my advice to you would be to pick one project and to submit an application for that. While we do fund general operating funds, that's not something that we do a lot. We really pick organizations that we believe need some kind of additional support through general operating funds to give those sorts of grants, and really strongly prefer to fund program related costs. So I would encourage you to submit one application for the project that you think is best suited, that you think has the strongest framework at this point. It really depends. And if you want to, shoot me an email, you can certainly do so, and we can talk about that. But unfortunately, I can't give you like a straight answer as to how you should apply. As for resources, I'm sorry, Mikki, did I interrupt you?
Well, so we got some help from Pat on the back end, and he finished off Jorge's question for us. So do you have any sources or freely available programs in Spanish that have proven successful in the past?
Great question. I think so. Definitely on our website under resources. It really depends on what you're looking for. We have available challenges and vegan challenges that are in multiple languages. Let's see. There's I think some handouts and other things focused on different topics. It would really depend on the sort of topic that you're interested in. But I know that I'm not sure which group you're with, but we have lots of organizations that work in Spanish-speaking countries that do fantastic work, and I'm sure we could connect you and get some resources for you. So yes, definitely we can find some good resources for you. Let's see.
So Miguel also has a question. Miguel says hi and thank you for our support. We always love hearing from our grantees and saying hello. So Miguel asks, related to special projects, I'm working with a couple of folks to organize a conference in Mexico. The goal is that we will share tools to activists Latin America wide to improve, measure, and manage their personal welfare while they activate. Do you think that this project can be entered as a special project?
Yeah, I do. I think you can apply for a special project for this grant, or for this event rather. As far as capacity building, so this project really sounds like it's focused on building capacity of animal activists and vegan activists. And so we do favor projects that are really focused on reaching the non-vegan public. That said, we do provide some funds for capacity building. And so as long as you're kind of showing that you have a strong potential audience for this, and that you have an idea of how many people you're going to reach, who's going to attend this conference, and the kind of work that they're doing, the kind of activism that they do, then yes, this would be eligible for funding.
Oh.
Oops, we clicked at the same time.
Okay, so Max asks, is there any precedent for doing a cruelty-free fashion show? Would that fall under special projects? So we actually have funded fashion show and fashion show type events, also just fashion events and conferences in general. That would actually fall more under community events. So the way we try to separate those two applications and types of projects is if your event has a set date. So if it's taking place on a day or a weekend or over the course of a specific week, then it would be more of a community event application and event. Whereas if your project is longer term, like you're developing curriculum or working with schools for a semester or creating tools, learning tools for months, that would be more of a special project application. So assuming this fashion show would take place on a specific day or weekend, you could apply under community events.
Yeah, and we actually have an activist story about a cruelty-free fashion show that we supported in China. And so, yeah, definitely a precedent for doing cruelty-free fashion shows. Let's see. Thomas asks, are you talking more about school dorm cafeterias providing the food, or restaurants within a student center, such as offering free samples of Panda Express Beyond Orange Chicken? So either, really. You know, when I was talking about the priorities under special projects for next year, we're really talking more about school cafeterias, but definitely would also fund offering free samples of Beyond Chicken. You know, if there's a Panda Express in a school cafeteria or a school center, we would definitely fund that as well. So that project being more of a food sampling project that would fit within our community events program.
Unity Care says, we provide nutrition services and education for individuals living in poverty, but because these services are not covered by insurance, we have to draw on donations and grants to support the work. Can we apply for support for this ongoing program service, or would we need a new program to apply for support? So you do not have to create a new program in order to apply for a grant. I will say there's a little bit of a fine line between a feeding program and what we're able to support. Due to the limited funds that we have and the high demand on those funds, unfortunately, we're not able to support full feeding programs such as food kitchens and providing full meals to individuals. But we do provide grants for nutrition education, and very often that also includes samples because we want to show people that they can eat food that's both healthy and delicious. So that would be more of a community events application, and just make your case, include your information and all the details of what your program does, and then include your budget, and then we would be able to make a decision from there.
Let's see.
So is it possible to program the screening of vegan and animal rights films as part of environmental education? Absolutely. Environmental education is usually one of the three big reasons behind going vegan. We know it's animal rights, personal health, and environmental and climate change. So yeah, absolutely. This is a great way. Film screenings are a great way to convey messages about environmental or animal rights or personal health. So yes, that would be a community events application, and then you would select film screening and answer all of the questions.
Great. So looks like, Kay, who had asked about libraries, kind of wanted to clarify, and I think this is a good question because she's talking about timing. So it looks like she wants to have food samples at a university library, and she needs funding for these samples, and they asked for January. So if you're applying for a food sampling in January, I would encourage you to submit an application through our community events program ASAP. We accept our community events program. We accept applications on a rolling basis. Our special projects program, which is, as Mikki mentioned, for longer term kind of bigger projects, is a quarterly program. So for your food samples, go ahead and submit a community events application, and you can do so for January. And as long as, so our community events program, we ask that you apply at least 4 weeks in advance, so about a month in advance. That's just because we get so many applications and we need time to review them and get back to you. And that gives us enough time to review before your event, and it should give you enough time to receive a decision before the event takes place. So also, if you decide to do it in April or later, then you could submit an application for then. So our special projects, please take a look at our website for our special projects deadlines. The next deadline, as I mentioned, is January 13th. Those applications will be reviewed by mid-March. So typically about 2 months for special projects applications to get reviewed on that quarterly schedule. Community events are reviewed on a rolling basis, and that's about a 1-month process. Hope that's clear.
Joe from Cape Town, South Africa says, I'm working humane education on farmed animals in South Africa, primary on consumer empowerment with call to action to establish veg pledges. Does this sound like a feasible veg grant project?
Yes, it definitely does. Especially in sub-Saharan Africa, we're looking at funding projects that are focused on farmed animals, and humane education to consumers is definitely something that we would consider funding with a call to action, which we love to see. So yes, that would definitely be a eligible project for VegFund. Let's see. Great.
It looks like if anyone's interested, our friend Pat in the background has posted that cruelty-free fashion show that Leah mentioned. There's a blog post on it, and it was posted to Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, that was, I think we are always talking about food and food consumption at VegFund, but fashion and what we wear and the other things that we consume is also something that's hugely important. A really great organization that VegFund has supported in the past is called Material Innovations Institute. And that's a group that's focused specifically on sustainable fashion, looking also at removing animals from the fashion industry. And I think more and more we're going to be seeing projects that are focused on not just food and what we eat, but what we consume in fashion, in materials, furniture, and all these things that we produce and create that use animal products. So definitely would love to see more projects focused on that. It's going to be hugely important. It is already. And so definitely encourage those sorts of projects. Yeah, and looks like Max knows MII, which is fantastic. Great. Wow, you guys, we got through most of your questions. If you have other questions, please do post them. I'm going to just take another quick spin and make sure we didn't miss anything. Yeah, so hopefully one of the things that can be kind of confusing is the different programs that we fund. So let me just really quickly, I'm going to talk about community events versus special projects once again, just so it's clear. So community events, you can apply year-round. We accept those applications on a rolling basis as long as they are submitted at least 4 weeks in advance of your project. So that's really important. And if it's not, then we probably won't review it because we won't have time to review it in time. Special projects. I want to actually share my screen here so I can show you the deadlines that we have coming up. Present share screen. So here we have, as I said, our next deadline for special projects is January 13th. So right now our submission portal is open and you can submit a special projects grant. That will close the end of day Eastern time on January 13th. And then it'll be closed for about a month. And then we'll reopen it with the next deadline being that Friday, April 14th. And then the next 2 deadlines are going to be July and October. So typically, for special projects grants, you can bet that we will be accepting applications in January, April, July, and October, with those being the closing dates, and then we'll reopen a couple months before the next deadline. So hopefully that's clear enough, and you can always apply by clicking the Apply Login button. That will take you to our application portal, and where you can create an applicant profile and submit an application.
We received another question. When purchasing products and turning in receipts, if you only use part of the package, how should we handle this? For example, I use half a package of an ingredient. So some ways that I have seen this handled is, well, you mentioned ingredient. It's very often with food supplies. There are multiple ways to deal with this. For some of our frequent grantees who host a lot of food sampling, what they'll do is, especially with frozen or shelf-stable samples, they'll save it for the next event, and then that's food that they already have, and they don't request funding for their next event. If you maybe don't host that many food sampling events, another way I've seen this dealt with, especially by Food for Life instructors or other nutrition education instructors, is they'll actually include a list of how much they've used. And then they'll say, okay, I bought a package of flour for $5, but I only used half of it. So they only request reimbursement for $2.50 or half of it. So that could be a little note on the receipt, or some instructors do go so far as to provide a whole Excel sheet, and they track their ingredient usage and then only request the funding for us that they actually use. And at the end of the day, we also understand that it's really hard to be exactly precise. So if you purchase a spice, you're not going to use an entire bottle or jar of cinnamon in one event. So we do ask that you do your best. And if there are other ingredients that you're able to use, like maybe you can use a little bit of cinnamon from home or something left over from a previous event, our goal is to spread our funds as much as possible to help as many animals and people in the world and make the biggest impact as possible. So if you're able to get by with using an ingredient that you already have on hand, then try doing that. But we also understand sometimes we're also going to pay for some ingredients that you might not use 100% at an event.
Yeah, something Mikki and I were talking about when we were preparing for this AMA is that it's so difficult to answer every single question about every single case. And we do our best, certainly, in these AMAs. But we just encourage you to get a sense on our website of the kinds of projects that we fund and to make your case in your application, to explain to us why you think this purchase, something that you're buying or something that is included in your program expenses is really going to enhance your ability to do vegan outreach to the public. And that's really the best that we can, the best advice that we can give you is, explaining how whatever it is that you need for your program will really be necessary. And it's there's so many different projects and there's so many different cases. It's really difficult for us to even know, and we certainly haven't seen every example, to know how to answer every question. And we want to see innovation. We want to see new things come across our table. So just do your best, and we'll do our best, and that's as good as we can do right now. Real quick here, looks like we have a question. College initiatives are special projects category. NYC is going after doctors and nurses as a new mayoral initiative. Do you offer funding for individuals versus big corps? Okay, so let's break this down. The first question, college initiatives are special projects category. So again, if you're doing campus outreach, let's say you're doing an event on campus or food sampling at a college, something that's kind of a finite time period, an event that's really focused on reaching a specific audience during a particular time, that's probably going to fit into our community events category. So if it's something that's kind of a long-term initiative, you're trying to introduce a course at a college, or you're trying to change what a college cafeteria serves in the food that they serve, then that would probably be a special project. We do fund individuals and we fund organizations. So if you're doing kind of a larger project that's focused on, more of a institutional outreach, we do fund individuals, but I would strongly encourage you to come up with some kind of a coalition or maybe partner with an organization, simply because these types of projects take a lot of work, and to have just one individual doing that work, we know from experience that that's very difficult and nearly impossible. And it's really necessary to have different stakeholders involved, especially when you're doing kind of a larger initiative, like the mayoral initiative that you're describing. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have further questions, you can email us. But it sounds like there's kind of two different possibilities for what this project could be. Here is a real newcomer question from Lars. Are you only helping with funding the materials, or are you funding time doing the activity itself? So this is a tough question. So we try to fund really specifically expenses related to a program or the project that is outreach focused. We know that this includes time spent. And so if you can, in your application, make the case that the time, the time that you're trying to apply for funding for, whether it's, essentially it's a person's salary or their hourly wage, it just really needs to be tied to the project itself. We really can't fund staff positions. That's just something we don't have the capacity to do. But if it's maybe, time spent to do marketing, or times for a social media manager to do event-based marketing for a particular project, then we might be able to fund those expenses. Really just making sure that those expenses are tied to the programmatic outreach. Hopefully that answers your question, Lars. Once again, just saying, make your case in your application for why what you need is essential to the carrying out of this project. So we've got about 10 minutes left. If you have other questions that you haven't asked or something that's come up before in your application process and you want to ask us, please feel free. Seeing a lot of questions about institutional outreach, like to colleges and universities this round, and that's great. It's always a really great way to reach a captive audience. All right. So I feel like when is our next AMA? So we try to do these quarterly. So we are hoping to do another one in March of next year. We will definitely, if you're not on our email list already, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website, and you should get updates about our AMAs. But you can always email us and ask us when our next AMA is. I've been mentioning emails a lot, so I'm going to just put this email address here. If you have grants related questions, you can email grants@vegfund.org. That will go to our program assistant, and that's the best way to start with a grants related question. If she's not able to answer it, then she will forward it to one of us, and we'll be able to answer your question. But that's a great place to start with any kind of program or grants related question. And also, I want to highlight our guide to submitting an application, because I think this too is a really great place to start. So on our website here, vegfund.org, if you come up to the top and under resources and then click on guides, which I didn't do fast enough. We have a lot of guides to different VegFund processes. And right here, the second one down, how to apply for vegan advocacy grants from VegFund. This is a PDF document. You can also access it online. And this goes through step-by-step our application process, how to sign into our application portal. And it looks like we've pasted that link here as well. So you should be able to click on that. But before you start asking questions about the application process, I would strongly encourage you to look at this document first. We've taken a lot of time to make sure the most frequently asked questions are in here. And it will most likely answer the questions that you have regarding those processes. And it's always available, so you can always come back to it, and it's searchable, so you can look for your answer. But it's a good resource, especially if you're new to applying for a grant from VegFund. I'll also just show you our resources library, which I alluded to at the beginning of this session. We have tons and tons of resources. It's a searchable library, so you can search for certain things. You can also filter by category, and we have lots and lots of categories. So if you're interested specifically in climate and environment focused resources, you can enter that. And we have podcasts listed. We have environmental resources that we've compiled. Lots and lots of things available here.
I don't think we're getting any new questions, it seems, for several minutes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining and signing on today. This will be recorded, or it has been recorded, and we will put it up on our website under our resources. So you should be able to find it. And our communications team also does really great work to identify each question and kind of put the timestamp, so that if you want to come back and hear a response to a specific question, you can do so. But mostly, we just really appreciate your enthusiasm and your energy and your desire to do vegan outreach. It's what we're passionate about, and it's the reason we do the work that we do.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Please, if you have a moment, take a second to fill out our survey. We'd love to hear from you and get some feedback about how this went.
Yep. vegfund.typeform.com/DEC-2022-AMA. Please respond to our questions. And yeah, thanks again so much for being here. And we look forward to reviewing your applications.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.